¿Sí? Vale. Egunon, eta ongi etorri aurtengo Donostiako zinemaldiko prentsaurreko berrira. Gaur prentsaurrekoan The Wonder filma izango dugu. Hola.
Hi, and welcome to everyone to the press conference of today. We're presenting the film The Wonder, participates in the official section, and to present it we have with us part of the team that has made it possible to see this film. I'm starting from my right, KILA Lord Cassidy, actress. We've got SEBASTIÁN LELIO, the director, and we have Matthew Herbert, who is the composer of the film. And I would like to start, as always, as asking a question as regards the beginning of the story. So, question specifically is for the director, for SEBASTIÁN LELIO. Are we no one with stories? We have to believe with devotion the stories we see and listen to. I've got the feeling what happens in the contemporary film from the outset, it's a film. We're taken out and then we introduced into the film. How did you draw that idea? That is to say, was it there from the outset or not? Hi, good morning. I'm very moved to be here. I came for the first time in 2005 with La Sagrada Familia, which is my first film, and to come back now to the official competition with this film that we love very much is very moving for me. LELIO is my surname, not Lelo, by the way. Get it right. A mistake that is usually takes place, no problem, nevertheless. And I think that we felt like of finding a device that would allow us, that apart from talking, for example, about the different challenges and things that the characters went through, always was to find a way that the film could also form part of the problem at the same time, in its discourse, in its story and fiction as well. Because, of course, The Wonder, apart from the issues that obviously it addresses, it also addresses the mechanisms of fiction. That is the way the characters operate, using these stories as a vehicle. Sometimes there's stories in which they create by default, and sometimes because of an option, but the clash between beliefs systems is the key or the center of the narrative. Science, in this case, versus science and faith, or magical belief. I'm asking you, the spectator, are going to be subject to the mechanisms of fiction. You're going to forget what's being told, or you're going to believe in the story, and perhaps the mechanism that you use is not so different to the mechanisms the characters use to believe in their own stories. So what do you believe in? And that's the way I wanted to approach it. Yes, and following along, congratulations, Sebastián. I'm over here on the left. Hi. Oh, hi. I thought it was a fantastic film. I loved it very much. I want to congratulate you all and to ask you also about the phrase from what it starts up. It says, without stories, we're nothing. And I think you say, is that the pleasure of telling stories that took you to this story that breaks up with what you've done before, different to what you've done before, and also ask you about the energy, that energy, special energy, which leaves you at the end of the film. There's something there. There is a certain special energy that is portrayed in the film. Thank you very much. What can I say? Well, without the stories, we're nothing. Well, the truth is, storytelling, everything is storytelling, and storytelling is not only entertainment, it's also politics. And in that sense, I believe that one of the things The Wonder makes an urgent film of today is the role that the stories play, what story we're believing in the film. They clash, obviously, and Lib Wright's character, for example, that is portrayed by Florence Pugh, God bless her, by the way, and she's a character that has a scientific mentality. So therefore, the way she reads reality inside contains a certain doubt. There's always a question in her. She's prepared to change, to modify and to adapt. Different to the other characters in the film who it seems they've found a truth and they are set in that position. They say they found their God, so to speak. And they're not prepared to move from that position. And that's a definition of fanaticism. A fanatic found his truth and he will operate, or she will operate henceforth. So therefore, the film is not trying to tell you no to faith. It's just trying to say yes to spiritual elasticity and intellectual elasticity and to the capacity to adapt against fanaticism and any strict position. And that's what we're going through globally and politically nowadays. And as regards to the energy that you talked about, these two people are involved. The novel already had a very powerful energy. The way in which the novel scales up in the second part of the novel, and the way the story goes from being a type of obsession of the nurse to understand the mechanisms behind this supposed miracle or hoax. All of a sudden, and very quickly, it transforms into something that traps her. For example, when she discovers not the mechanisms through which or what's happening is happening, let's say the way and she is being fed, but the reason behind it is so devastating. And I think that the film finds its own energy, as you say, and at that time and at that moment, it's directed into a sort of a spiral that the character, to save herself, has always got to save the young girl. Okay.
Hi, hello, good morning. I'm going to speak English. This is Alex Pizzotto from Players Magazine Italy. My question is for the director and for the composer, Mr. Herbert. I found this percussive score particularly interesting, that introduces anxiety. It's one of the elements that really introduces this touch of dark to the movie. I'd like to ask the director how he wanted to use this great score, and of course the composer, how he created that, and if it's true that it's one of the elements that make the movie more anxious in a way, more dark, gloomy maybe. And congratulations, of course, it's brilliant.
Thank you. Matthew?
Oh, no,
would you like to?
Oh, Matthew?
Well, I think we've done 4 scores, right? 4 scores together, and so we had the luxury to start working. Like when we started shooting, Matthew was sending the first melodies or the first sounds, and so it was really like a luxury to have a year or a bit more of time para procesar
to process and understand what was the tone of the score, and we wanted the film to have music, and for the music to be a character, and the film moves in a territory which is sometimes difficult. It's a Western, and sometimes it's a bit elusive at time, and it deals with perhaps issues that may be almost terrifying. And we wanted the score to be able to avoid those territories without necessarily introducing anything. I think Matthew can develop this a bit more, I believe. Matthew?
Thank you. Just to say thank you for being here, and to Sebastian for making a wonderful film. I think, as Sebastian said, it's another character, the score. So it took a very long time and a lot of conversations to work out what kind of character is this. Does this character know more than the characters that we see? So, and actually, in general, because music has the capacity to do many things at once. Often in film, the music is ahead of the characters on the screen, and I think I'm sort of thinking back to the film, but I think very much it's from within the music. So it's it's happening in the same time somehow as the characters are experiencing it. So, for example, when Lib discovers the truth about KILA's character, the percussion that you're talking about, in a way, is representing how she is inside, rather than the film telling you, oh my God, this is a terrible thing, or what's going to happen next. It's just, she's sort of vibrating at a different frequency. And all of these sounds that you hear, or the percussion and things, are all taken from other places in the film. So if you see a chair move, or a door creak, or someone cough, or a vocal, I took all of those things to make the score. So it's the same materials as what you're seeing. And so I think what happens is that you instinctively understand the language of the sounds because you've experienced it already, but it's through a different filter somehow. And I think, lastly, I think the music is very much from elsewhere, you know, from either from the future or from Lib's past. At the beginning, you hear this vocal phrase, and for me and Sebastian, this feels like Anna calling to Lib, these sort of human and these female voices calling, and this sense of elsewhere, not understanding quite whether this is an alien, or whether this is God, or whether this is the past, or whether this is a future sort of thing. And I think there's a huge trap with films set in Ireland that they normally have like these like little flutes, like Titanic kind of flute thing going on. And there's a big trap around Irish instruments and locating it in Ireland. And I think there are some Irish instruments in there, but they're all been messed up and sort of destroyed and broken and reimagined. But that, I think this is something for me which was a real liberation, was to liberate the world of the film out of Ireland, despite it being so specifically set there and the Irishness being important. It was liberating to take it and to talk about stories, future, past, present, and all those different states.
Hola, buenos días.
Hi, good morning. First of all, congratulations for this very peculiar film, but very interesting. The question is, how did this story come to you? What moves you to decide to change a register from a very different subject matter to the Oscar award-winning about trans people? It's a very big leap and a big change. What moved you to do this? Thank you. Well, I think it was 2017 when I read the novel. Tessa Ross and Ed Gainey had the rights to the novel, and the novel really hooked me, really, despite the fact that it was very difficult territory for a director, because the subject matter is very serious, but the challenge is to find making it cinematographically, and to achieve that balance between, and to make it. That was the most difficult thing for me, but above all, the two main characters, for example, the character of Florence, Lib, and with Anna, who portrayed KILA. I connected with him with the fact that their relationship, particular relationship, would be in the center of the film. I thought it was very unusual. In general, these types of relationships are not the key of the film or the center of the film, but what happened between them was too attractive, and I thought we had to portray it. This mutual fascination, and at the end of the day, this love, this need of saving each other, I thought had to be portrayed. I'm not too sure whether it's too different in the case of a fantastic woman. In this case, these are women who are feminine bodies who are in dispute because of different social forces, and these are women who are taking a different path to what is being socially mandated, which is represented by these group of men who are notables, for example. And so in that sense, I don't think it's not that different. I think it's a variation probably, or going further in depth into the subject matter. Hi, I thought it's a very interesting film where the truth is the sound is another character of the film, as it should be when it's decided as this way. The actresses are fantastic, those close-ups where there's no sound and their faces is beautiful. And as I said before, the beginning is very daring as they show us where it's going to be shot, and then all of a sudden, without any solution of continuity, you see the protagonist in a boat and you know she's there. So you get right in the film. And I connect this to the end. The in-out, which is in the bird in the cage, for example, because as you said, the ish is the necessity of telling a story. A human being without stories would die of starvation. So therefore, this is something we need, as if it were food. So therefore, it's a fantastic story, because right in the hunger in Ireland that took place, that someone is not eating in order to expiate the life of the incestuous brother and so on. I like the way that's addressed in the film, and all of the things that appear. For example, the family that have got problems because the mother, as the son died, she wants the daughter. The truth is, then there's a family which is selected because she ended up being the daughter of the nurse who had lost her baby. And so therefore my question is, behind the script and your directing work, a self-suggestion, is that is a fanaticism, you said, is evil, but it suggests evil. But we're looking at direction, and the nurse is going through her trance because of the difficulty, because of the substance that she drinks. But it manages to make the girl to be convinced that she's going to come back to life. Despite her religious, she self-suggests her so that she's reborn and she can forget the trauma of the incest. And I thought this was magical, the truth be said. So the way you treated the power of self-suggestion, fanaticism, good fanaticism we could call it. I know the word is contaminated. Auto-suggestion could be very negative, but it can also be very positive, because it can free us and save us from diseases and so on. And then for the actress, someone so young, how can you get into a situation of such an oppressive religious atmosphere or setting, which is not the case nowadays? At the end of the day, congratulations for a film which I think was the real deal as a whole.
Well,
about your performance.
Sorry. Well, I found it so much fun to be able to play Anna. 2 years ago, my mum had read the book, and she'd called up our agent saying, I think KILA would have so much fun doing this. And Sue went, oh, well, I mean, we'll see what we can do. I don't think it's coming out yet. And we just left it for 2 years, and then 2 years later, the taping comes along of The Wonder, and the minute I found out the character, I mean, the first time I'd even saw her, even though we don't have a lot in common, I mean, she's religious, she grew up, she's experienced grief that not many people can experience. I mean, knowing that we've not a lot in common, I felt so connected to her, and it was crazy. And the minute I had that taping, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that role if I ended up getting it. And the minute I got the role as well, I was so happy. I mean, I'd cried. It was an amazing experience to have had, and during the role, to be able to immerse myself into the religion that Anna has to go through. Every day I would do the rosary. I would do multiple prayers over and over again. I'd spend every single day doing as much as I possibly could. I mean, my mom even wanted to mouth feed me. I said no to that, because God knows what people would have thought. But I remember knowing exactly what I wanted to do with the role, And on my first day filming, I'd met Florence and I'd met Seb and Sebastian. And the minute I'd seen Florence as well and I'd worked with her, I had a chemistry with her that I don't think I would have been able to have with anyone else. And with Sebastian as well, he directs things in a way where he doesn't want one specific thing. He kind of gives you freedom to do whatever you want. And knowing I had so much freedom with so many amazing people to work with, it was a fantastic experience. And because of all these amazing people, it kind of helped me get into the zone of going, right, I know exactly what I have to do. And then as I've seen the movie and the music is fantastic, it goes perfectly with the theme of everything. I'm just so happy to be part of such a magical thing. And yeah, it was so much fun filming.
And I think what's interesting as well, having spent a long time on the film, I realized towards the end of the film that actually Anna was right, that she summons, you know, she prays relentlessly to be saved from her situation, and it works. So in many ways, her sort of religious faith or her spirituality or her belief in a better world is proven to be true, and she kind of wins in a way. She never falters in the film, and quite rightly, because at the end she's saved, you know, which is a kind of a beautiful thing in a way.
And perhaps to answer your question, I think, yes, it's a way of reading the film which is quite precise, what you said, Lib. She's a rationalist and who believes it's going to resolve this problem through reason, against superstition, so to if you will, but she doesn't resolve it that way. And when the reason makes her understand the mechanism, what's behind what's going on, that's the reason why the girl is making this sacrifice, and the reason is that's where the grief lies, and that's the only real thing in the middle of the story. The grief of the girl's grief is the only real thing, and Florence clashes with that grief, and she tries to do everything she can. And when she's got no other option, her solution is to descend into the imaginary of the daughter, into her own kingdom of the story that contains her, and to save her from there with her own images, with her own beliefs, and to make her come back to life, perhaps with a new identity, to reconnect her with another fantastic woman. And so therefore they're not too far away from each other, the truth be said. So therefore we're seeing a story, it's a story through option, a difference to stories because of imposition, which sometimes we operate in stories because we belong to a culture, because we've never looked at each other from outside. We've never thought that a belief is a thought in which a person insists until it becomes a belief, but thought can be rethought again. So therefore it can be adjusted, it can be adapted, and that's the difference with fanaticism. That's why I'm saying Lib's act is fanatical. It transcends reason, though, I believe. That's what it does. And once again, and it connected me very much to the character. The character, to save herself, has to transcend her own belief system and operate beyond, and to operate beyond reason. What she does, morally complex at least, and at least one could say it's irrational. Yes, I completely agree. What I want us to underline is the power of auto-suggestion. Yes, correct. Yes.
Hola.
Hi. Congratulations for the film, and I would like to ask you about some of the characters that appear in the film, because what drew my attention is that the film is set in way back when people are very retrograde, for example. It's very religious, but the journalist, the nun, and the nurse are very modern. They have a mindset that could be fit into a story of today and not a story of the past. Was that done on purpose, or was that a coincidence? or where I've invented it, and such is not the case. And also,
I wanted to ask the actress as well if there was anything particularly complicated or difficult of working in this project. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do you want to start?
Okay. Well, I didn't find anything was difficult to where I was nervous about going on set the next day, worrying about what I had to film. I found every single part of it really fun to do, but some of the scenes that I had to try the hardest were probably just the most emotional scenes. It was because always with scenes like that, you have to really root yourself in the moment, especially when you have to start off with a completely different emotion. And then it's in one big long take. You have to move through the emotions in real time. It's not like stop, cut, maybe put some tear stick on, or maybe kind of make you laugh to be happy. The hardest scene was having to do such a long scene and kind of start from a different emotion and go through so many complex emotions with so many minds racing through my head. And I was really tired at the end of that scene. But it was a fun day. It was a fun scene to shoot.
The big scene, the confession scene.
Yes.
It's actually when KILA turned 12.
Fine.
So it was quite a day.
Yeah. Because
yeah.
As I left the studio, I was in floods of tears, or people are wishing me happy birthday, and I'm like, thank you so much. But yeah, that was one of the scenes that I found the hardest, but the most enjoyable to do. Even though it sounds silly, I really enjoyed being able to go on that journey. Because after that, it felt as though I knew Anna inside and out. And she's always going to be a character that I'm going to love and remember with all my heart, because she was so much fun to play with. Even though the film's so restrictive in a way, it was such a fun thing to do.
And you asked us, KILA me pidió.
KILA, in the morning, KILA asked me whether we could film the complete scene without stopping, 5 or 6 pages of script. And I said, and this was music to my ears, but I thought it was quite impressive how someone so young could have so much commitment and such a deep understanding of the character. The truth is, we were very fortunate to find you, KILA, because we play in the relationship between Florence and the characters that are portrayed by Florence and KILA. And yes, the film operates it doesn't want to be 1862, it doesn't mean to be, and declaring that that's impossible. No, it doesn't pretend to have high degrees of historical precision. That's not the game that we're trying to portray in the film. And we've got to understand it's impossible to really know what it was like. So therefore, I think it embraces the film that possibility, and it also it turns it into part of the game. Hi, Eduardo Blanco from Europa Press. Sebastián, I would like to ask you whether you're let down because in Chile the new constitution hasn't been passed, and whether you're talking about fanaticism quite often to defend this new text. You've talked about fear, the fear that quite often a certain right wing is trying to generate in order to not pass or approve the constitution in this case. Well, in Chile, we're going through a process of constructing an intersubjective history, which makes the grade to where we are. The old constitution didn't work, and there was a crisis, and now we're going through a collective storytelling process in my country. Personally, I would have preferred that the text could have been approved. That was proposed, but the good news is that the constitutional process continues. The people said no to that text, and all of my respects to the people of Chile, and the same people that a year and a half before 1820, well, they said that 2020 did want a constitution, so therefore it's a people that we have to listen to, and there's no way that these processes can be hygienic, and can they be clean? They're full of the worst we have, in working in all and pulling in all different directions, and we're trying to achieve a text that's a constitution that will call us and will be a story once again that will have the capacity, of course, to bring us together as if through cohesion. I'm let down for what happened, but I'm looking forward to the long arc that the process still has to come. Two questions for Sebastián. I've got the feeling that your films always talk about loneliness and of the incredible characters that it talks about. What would be the loneliness of Lib? And the second question, it's impossible for me to see this film without thinking about the Irish town as if it were a town well attacked by the plague. What freedom did you have from the book and changing the narrative of Emma Donoghue's book? Could you repeat the second question? You make Sophocles. I always think Oedipus investigating on what happens in Thebes, like the Greek tragedy. Oedipus always comes into my mind. When I saw the film, I thought in Oedipus all the time. Someone who knows what's happening, and what's happening is inside him, but he doesn't know. Okay? Okay, I understand. Perhaps the characters that I portrayed have a certain loneliness or so, but it's not too articulated. I don't think it as solitary characters, but I do believe them, I think of them as they've got something as if they're alone against the world, on their own against the world, and I connect with that. Is because Gloria is a fantastic woman, and she knew about that, the tension that exists, for example, because the mandate of the community and individual freedom, and the characters that are prepared to pay the price to exercise their freedom, despite the fact whatever people say at that time, or the social order says at that time. So therefore they're on their own, and that's what I connect with them, the woman, the girl and the woman's character. What we had the good fortune of what you're saying of receiving a book that was very rich and had some background and investigation. It was very well created. It was a universe on its own. So therefore it was a privilege to be able to co-write with Emma and with Alice, and from a research that Emma had already done, being her, she's Irish, it's an understanding of the subtleties and the dynamics that are shown, which were very difficult to access, and in this case, for a Chilean director such as me. Myself, my connection was with the universal dimension of the story. The undesired character that comes along to this closed society when they adore a god, a specific god, and when there are certain rules that nobody wants for them to be altered at all. And she goes in believing that her journey is about something that's quite simple, but just like a spy suitcase which has a false bottom, for example, it transforms her. There's a twist there, and it's going to save her from getting lost, but it's also going to transform that town or village will be altered hereinafter, after Libs goes through it, like a Western, for example. And that was, of course, that's one of my ways of entering into the story. Okay, we've got time for one final question. Hi, good morning. Congratulations for the film. I'd like to ask you about the lighting of the film, because you said at the beginning there are moments in the film which almost are different genres, which include terror. There was a moment in the interiors and how the lighting was treated, and how anguish of the shots and the scenes, because it was all looked very closed in, and also the locations. How did you find those places and that landscape? Well, one of the great co-creators of the film is Ari Wagner, a great director of photography, and yes, she was a key element, a crucial element, shall we say, in finding the tone and the visual universe of the film. We directed the whole film for 2 weeks, and that's where the calligraphy and the language of the film started. Ari has an enormous amount of talent, and she managed to give it that amplitude, and those portraits that you see in the interiors or inside the house, which have a lot of strength, a lot of power. They inherit so much from the tradition of painting. And so I wanted to make a film with certain aesthetic splendor, but I think what Ari contributed, visually speaking, was more than what I expected. And I am very thankful and grateful. The same thing happens with Matthew's score. We wanted a score which was powerful and with a certain personality, and we wanted it to be a character. But how far we went has got a lot to do with makes the film have the tone it has, and a certain vibration or vibe which is its own, really. Okay, unfortunately we have to stop here, so in, out, and a big round of applause for the team and the 3 people of the team that are here today. Thank you.